I
Yes.
have been possessed by the interview demon, and I'm
Oh,
not thinking about anything right now.
you're also confident because you know you look good.
You
So
know
you're
you
like,
look
yeah,
good.
you're
It's
strutting
like
down the hallway. I'm like, nice to meet you.
oh.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the HRX Friends We Got This podcast, where we share our thoughts on the pharmacy profession, experiences as healthcare providers, and explore our identities as two women of color going after it all.
Hey, as we share our stories, we hope you laugh, maybe cry, and feel inspired as you get to know us. Because at the end of the day, friends, we got
We
this.
got this.
We do. Hey, Thu.
Hi, Sally. So funny because we already had like a 30-minute conversation before we
We
started
about
recording
something phenomenal because we're learning about each other every day and
every day.
the
And
things we have in common. And it's low-key freaky.
but seriously
It's,
though, it's very
it's
strange.
low-key freaky.
Real quick, like when do you have a first impression of me at all? Or
I
did
think
you think that like this girl and we probably have a lot of things in common. We should do a podcast, or was it just, you know,
I'll
I don't
tell you.
know, a guess, I guess. I don't know.
It wasn't a guess. So I'd been out on LinkedIn speaking up about certain things. You'd been out on LinkedIn speaking out about certain things. And people were reaching out to me like, you need to connect with her because you guys like are striking like the same tone. They were pointing it out to me. I was reading your thing, I was
Interesting.
liking it. I never jumped in your inbox or anything. I think maybe I commented once on a TOC intervention you were talking about where I was like, bro, that is like daily occurrence in my clinic too. She should know she's not alone in this struggle. So I commented, but I don't think I had commented on even more than five of your stuff. Like I really don't.
Yeah, I
I
don't
was
think
like
we interacted that much
on
before
LinkedIn,
on social
right?
media. Yeah.
Exactly. But I was like seeing that like you were speaking about your practice and what you were facing and hoping to like bring awareness to. But I was also speaking and hoping that things I wanted to bring attention to. And people were recognizing that we were like on similar missions to get people to pay attention to like what we were seeing that we weren't liking. And we're like,
Mm,
you guys should meet. You guys should talk. You guys should meet. You guys should
interesting.
talk. And then Jarika was like, you really need to talk to Thu because she's all about this stuff too. And that's when I decided to inbox you. But when, as far as impressions go, I knew how much like mental acrobatics I was doing before each post. Is the tone appropriate? Is the tone correct?
Gotcha.
Is it free of typos? Am I really conveying what I want to convey? So I was really at like a fan, right? Like I was admiring how you would tell these stories really beautifully. I've always been a fan of free form writing and like creative writing, back to journalism and stuff, like free form and creative writing and how like people use writing to express themselves. So I love that approach that you have where you really tell a story where like I just want to come in quick and just drop it like a hot potato and run out because I agonize over it the longer it is. So
Yeah.
that was like what prompted me to just
Interesting.
be like, I should talk to her. But then the moment we started talking, that's when it was just like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, well,
There's definitely, yeah, a dynamic exchange
thing.
right
It was
there.
like an explosion that happened because
Yeah.
I was literally in the middle of the night, like up with the baby. I was like, I'm just
Oh,
gonna
that's so
text her.
funny. Well, I asked that question obviously to get compliments from you, so thank you so much. But yeah, I think when we first met, I think I first met you in a big group of people. So, I definitely know of you and Resi Prep, and I've always been so enamored by the fact that you were able to make this thing happen. And
Oh my God.
yeah, so when we started interacting, it was just so cool to get to talk to
Thank you.
another, like a business owner in pharmacy, and it was just really inspiring. So
Oh,
I'm just
thank
super
you.
curious. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Now
But
you're
by the
making me.
way, my name is Thu, and you
Oh,
are,
hey. Hi, everybody. I'm Sally.
and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for being
We have
here.
a fun conversation today.
Yeah.
I wanted to have this conversation. First of all, it's going to be all about interviews
Mhm.
and interviewing for a residency, interviewing for jobs, especially in the pharmacy field, what
Yeah.
that's like, what's helped me, and my horrible, horrible experience. Of course, I enjoy telling stories and I enjoy telling really embarrassing stories about myself.
Not with you priming it like horrible, horrible, horrible. Like,
But the thing is, like, every time I talk to Sally in our conversations so far that we've put online, Sally's always like, "If they can just bring me in for an interview, I'm gonna score that, you know, like,
yeah.
I'm gonna seal the deal." And for me, I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm terrified." So,
Oh,
it's a 2 different perspective, I think.
it is. It's so crazy that different people, like we have different perceptions of ourselves as competitors. I'm always very insecure that the CV and the packet itself may not be impressive. But every interview I walk into, the first compliment is, "You've done a lot. You've done a lot." And I'm
Yeah.
always thinking, like, oh, thank you. Because I was worried that this thing was super skinny and I haven't done enough. But I'm I'm always just like, the reason why I love interviewing so much is whether I have gotten the job or not, I always have a goal and a strategy of what I want to leave behind. And it's three things I always want to leave behind. I make sure I'm clear about that. And that storytelling component, with that clarity of purpose that I come in with, that's what makes me so confident that the interview is not going to be where I bomb it. Like, I'm not going to get picked for the role because maybe I want to be paid way too much than the job is willing
Yeah.
to pay.
Yeah. Well,
But
I'm
it won't
excited
be.
to hear how you approach it then because, I've had some pretty terrible experiences. And then the other thing that I want to talk about today, so it's going to be several topics in one episode. Hopefully we can squeeze it in, but
Yes, we
it's
can.
all about bad pharmacy advice because
Ah,
it's just all over the internet. And then I've been told some terrible, really unhelpful things in the past. And I want to talk about it because
yeah,
it just, I don't know. I think a lot of people will take certain advice, and then just kind of go with it without questioning stuff. And I want to make sure
exactly.
that people are questioning the information that they're receiving because it may not benefit you at all. And I've been there. So,
And also, like, I think, because there's a huge push that one of the big ways that you're going to improve is by seeking feedback, right? You got to go
mm,
out there, ask for feedback, ask people based on their interactions and observations about your performance.
yeah,
What are some things that I can do better? And I think advice is such a cornerstone and feedback is such a cornerstone in our education as pharmacists, that when we start working and we realize, like, ooh, you gotta start sorting this thing out because some of these are so useless,
yes, they're useless. They're even harmful sometimes. They can prevent
harmful.
people from going after things that they want to go after. And so it's
100%.
going to be a good episode. I'm telling you right
Yeah, I'm
now,
excited.
this is going to be a favorite episode for sure, even
I'm
before we
excited there.
started. Um, but before we go into all of that, you guys, thank
Yes.
you so much for listening to us and watching us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever. Please remember to subscribe and engage with us. If you're watching on YouTube, write in the comments below what are
Mhm.
some terrible advice that you got in the
Yeah.
pharmacy field and why do you think that was a horrible advice? And if you're listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever, please rate, follow us. We love to hear from you and we
Yeah.
need you to engage with us to
Yes.
get the word out.
Absolutely. And I know we say this a lot, but we really and truly are putting all of this together for you. So we love to hear from you. Share, like, subscribe, definitely comment. We love to hear what you guys' takes are on different things. But when you rate our podcast and you leave a review for our podcast on any platform, it is how other people are also able to find us. And if we are helping you in any way while walking the dog, doing the dishes, anything, bring that joy to someone else by just going on and rating the show.
Totally.
Thank you in
I love
advance.
that. Yes, I love that. Okay. So when it comes to interviews, when I was a lot younger, interviews were really tough because I always felt like I didn't really have specific stories. So the questions that typically will throw me
Mm.
off a lot is tell me of a time when you had to deal with a conflict.
Oh,
That
wow.
that's a big struggle for me because not gonna lie. Okay, I hope no like future employers are gonna watch this, but I'm a little bit of a conflict avoidant. So, you
Are
know what I
you
mean?
really?
Oh, totally. I mean,
I'm so,
I've gotten a lot better because
I'm
it's like
really
you have
surprised
to.
by that
Really?
because I think you express your ideas so clearly that I really I would imagine that if you found yourself in a conflict and you were made aware that there was a conflict, you're such an excellent communicator of your thoughts and your ideas that
Yeah.
you'd be like, we're taking care of this right now.
I feel like but I feel like when I was younger, like when I was applying for
Yeah.
residency or even for my first jobs,
Yeah.
I was like I was really nervous about the conflict question because a lot of the times my examples would be conflict with a preceptor or conflict with
Yeah.
another provider. And that was really like I didn't really have a lot of experience because you I was always taught to just submit and then agree with everything.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, so that was probably the hardest question for me. Now that I've gone through 10 years of experience, I probably have more stories to tell and
Yeah.
explain it well. But what is like a difficult question for you, or do you even have one? Like, do you feel like you have
I do.
everything
No.
down? No?
Oh my God.
Because you seem so confident with it.
No. I think for me, the thing I have always kind of struggled with is how much to reveal about myself at an interview. So, because I know that ultimately employers want to know that they're hiring a dependable person. As a person who lives with a chronic illness, how much of that do I want to share? And when that chronic illness is such a huge part of who I am, like it's a part of me. There are days I cannot get up. I just can't. It doesn't matter how much I want to. Today it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen today. Um, and that worries me about interviewing. And how much to share. Like it's that part. But when we're talking about performance driven questions and stuff like that, that's my comfort zone. I love that part. But it's usually what's been a difficult decision you've had to make? And I'm like, oh, it was difficult.
Oh,
Yeah, like it was
interesting.
difficult to do everything that I've ever done that's been worth it has been a difficult decision because I am so calculative in the steps I take. I have a lot of different things to consider. Um, it's difficult deciding to go do a residency in a city where I have no family and friends. If I'm hospitalized there, like I'm on my own. Um, it's
Yeah, that's
difficult to
tough.
go to pharmacy school 2.5 hours away from family and friends. If I'm sick and in the ER, who am I going to call to come pick me up from the ER? I had to call classmates and friends that I was comfortable with
Yeah.
to do that. But
That I mean
that question,
that's a really important point to bring up because a lot of people have disabilities
yeah,
and you're not the only one that is questioning how much to disclose because
exactly.
how much can that affect your your opportunities and things like
Yeah.
that. Do you how do you approach it then? Let's start with
I
that.
I balance it. I think when I talk about my journey as a person who is uniquely abled, um, I talk about how it's my like come along buddy. It's present in everything I make. And I have had hard lessons that I've had to learn in recognizing my limits and boundaries and respecting those so that I am not hurting myself for the sake of a job. But again, as my CV can demonstrate to you, having this disability has done absolutely nothing to hinder me from accomplishing the things that I've set intentionality behind and said, I'm going to do this or I'm going to accomplish that. So that's like usually the little security
Yeah.
blanket that I wrap it up into, because when we objectively look at my career and we objectively look at my academic
Yeah.
performance or anything, going to the ER and being discharged from the ER at 3 a.m. and coming at 8 a.m. to take an exam where I have to get an 85, I have done it. It's like,
I mean, that's that part too of having really amazing stories to tell. And that, even though you are uniquely able and you have a different perspective, that is what makes you stand out. People are going to remember those stories, you
that's right.
know?
That's true.
And
I
that's
tell
how
people
easily
that.
memorable. Yeah, that's
Yeah, but
amazing.
you bring up a really interesting point too, because if we think about the average age of the resident pharmacy residency candidate right now, do they have enough experience to
Yeah,
be able to share something meaningful about a difficult decision or a time they had conflict? Because that conflict question is just assessing your communication skills and ability to deal with stress and ability to
right.
coordinate and recognize, like, this is going beyond me. I think I'm going to get a manager involved to mediate the
Yeah.
conversation. Do they have the level of maturity and life experience to be able to answer that question, and you as a recruiter to get from that answer what you're
Yeah.
looking for, right?
But see, I mean, that's a really tough thing because it's one of those annoying situation where it's like I want experience, but then I have to get the experience and then but people don't want to hire you because you don't have any experience. It's like, well, then where am I supposed to get the experience?
It's like,
It's such a problem, and I ran into that problem so much. I think that, young people, you can still go out there and get the experience. It's
100%.
just that, you have to, I don't know, just put yourself out there. I think that's why
Yeah.
we say it's so important for you to have a mentor
Yeah.
because that mentor might be able to get you the job without that whole like, but I don't have experience.
Yeah.
And then helping you with your interview questions. And
Yeah.
even if you don't have conflicts in the workplace, maybe you experience conflicts elsewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe at a volunteer job, maybe at church or whatever it
Yeah.
might be, there's so many opportunities. So I feel like when I say, yeah, I was really young and I didn't have a lot of experience with dealing with conflicts, I think that had I had a mentor, they could have pulled
Mm.
that out of me.
Ah,
You know?
such an important point, though.
Yeah.
That's so true. 'Cause the power that mentorship can have, because we put, I feel like the energy as a profession that we put into having the linear professional road forward, like it just has to be, I'm going to graduate, I'm going to do a residency, then I'm going to do another residency, then I'm going to get the job of my dream, then I'm going to become a boss, then I'm going to become, it's like so much energy and push on just having this linear path forward. If we were, I think, putting even half of that energy into helping students see the importance of attaching yourself to a person that has had a not very linear way forward, because that's the majority. The majority didn't have a linear career. Like, they didn't apply for everything and get it the first time. And what they have to tell you about this journey, that's the real value. Because the person that's had a linear way
Yeah,
forward,
let me tell you all the mistakes that I've ever made so you don't make them also. And the person, you're very right, because the person who got everything that they ever wanted is not going to know what pitfalls that might
yeah,
occur.
or
And I
how to
know. And I
redirect
know.
you, or how to
Yes.
redirect you, right? Like, as a mentor, one of like the biggest challenge is when either a mentee is not meeting the goals that they've set for themselves, and you have to have this ability to come in and give them perspective about, you're having a moment, and I don't want us to miss this moment. Like, this is the, it didn't go as planned moment, but it can go a different way where we could still end up in that same destination, or, Lord and behold, an even better place. It's like
Very
an
true.
even better place,
So
right?
let's talk about some of my mistakes because the other day, Sally posted a reel and she was like, no matter where you are and no matter, who you know at that interview site, you need to be on top of your game the entire time. And let me tell you, when I saw that, I was like, ah, it just brings me back to my PTY1 interviews where I interviewed at a site that I did 2 months of rotations there. So I technically knew a bunch of these
Knew
people.
everybody.
And especially with the residents, I'm, like, so chill with them. You know what I mean? That I fell into that trap, so, ugh, I don't even wanna talk about it because it's so embarrassing.
Oh, you got overly familiar.
I got overly familiar, and it was the time when I'm supposed to have this, conversation with the residents, and they had bought me lunch, so I'm, like, eating lunch. I took off my jacket because 'cause I'm like, "Alright, cool," like, rolling up my sleeve, eating my lunch, and then
Yeah,
it was
this
really
is so
embarrassing.
good.
It was really
This is
embarrassing now that I
too
think
good.
about it.
I can't.
I mean, I was a lot more professional with the preceptors who were interviewing me, the
Yeah.
RPD, all of that. But then when it came to the residents, I was like, okay, break time. And girl, I was not on top of my game, and it was looking back super embarrassing, like very, very embarrassing.
Dude,
So
you're so funny. I think I've had experiences where like someone who's interviewing develops this really cool like we're besties at first sight experience with another resident at the interview and completely just gravitates to that person and it's just and I'm like you don't know this girl from anywhere, you need to calm down, like you're still on an interview, there's like
wait,
seven of
what?
us, so it's like it got overly familiar really quickly when it was supposed to be like a
Oh,
panel interview and we were all supposed to have, and I was thinking like I don't think you understand that like all seven of us here are going to have a say about your standing, it's not just this one person but all seven of us will, and it just was like she missed it, but I think in hindsight thinking about that now it's like if she was so nervous and she found her person in the room, I don't know that I would have acted differently either. Like I would have been like, "Oh,
the
someone
nerves,
who get someone
the
who
nerves
gets
are
me.
real.
I'm so
Yeah.
nervous. Like this place makes me
Uh,
super, super
um,
nervous."
I was really nervous during another residency interview where I brought this bag with me and then I like left the bag in one of the rooms because I they had taken me to different
Different
areas of the
rooms.
hospital
Yeah.
to do interviews in different areas and I like left my bag in one of them because I was so nervous. I was just like so freaked out that I was
Yeah.
there. I'm so in my head. So then like literally maybe like 2 3 hours later I'm like, "Oh my god, where's my bag?"
When you're back to we're back to so I
So
have
embarrassing. So embarrassing.
I have a similar story that I think the RPD kind of was looking at me and was like, "You're insane." I flew down to Florida for an interview and checked out of my Airbnb. So I have my luggage that's a carry on with me. And I brought it to the interview because right from the interview, it was going to be straight to the airport. And I put the carry on in the trunk of the Uber. I get to the hospital. I just get out of the Uber and walk in the hospital. I leave my carry on in the Uber. I'm calling and
That
I'm like,
sucks.
I'm traveling so light, but it's not clicking. I'm so in game mode, like
Oh, that's horrible.
clicking. And I'm like, I'm traveling so light. And the RPD says something, and she was like, "Oh, you can leave your carry-on." Oh, wait, you don't have a carry-on. Did you just fly in this morning? I was like, my carry-on is in the Uber. Yeah. And my response was, my carry-on is in the Uber, but it'll be okay because my medications are in my bag, and that's the only thing that's important right now.
Nice.
I'm fine. And she's like, you can take a minute, contact the Uber driver and see if they'd be willing to bring the bag back. And I'm there and I'm like, no, it'll be fine. It's just a bag. It's just a
Oh,
bag with clothes and toiletry in it. It's
wow.
replaceable. I want to focus on this. And
Yeah.
she like pulls me to the side and she goes, Sally, is it? She was, Sally, is it? This is going to be okay. We don't start for
Oh.
another half hour. You guys just get here. We take a headshot. There's a lot going on here before your interview starts. I'd like you to just call the Uber place, Uber driver, at least to find out what it's going to take to get your luggage back. And I immediately realized, like, this lady is being a human being to me. Like,
Yeah, that's legit.
like she can clearly see that I am possessed by the interview demon. I'm possessed. I
Yes.
have been possessed by the interview demon, and I'm not
Oh,
thinking about anything right now. And mind you, the carry-on was borrowed from my sister. So it's been
just gonna kill you. That's so
like,
fun.
you
But
did what?
legit shout out to that RPD.
Good shout out to
She
that RPD. And it was just
she
kind of
cared about
like
you as a person. That's
she thought about me as a
amazing.
person because she pulled me. There's like four other candidates that have arrived. People are still trickling in. And she just like talked to me in like this really low tone that wasn't authoritative or anything. It was just like,
Oh,
this doesn't kick off for another half hour. Call I called the Uber, and of course I'm still like hyper, and I'm telling the Uber driver, if you come back to the hospital, drop it at the front desk. My name is Saley. I will find it. Just drop it at the entrance of the
yeah,
hospital. Then I walked down at the entrance of the hospital and told them I forgot my thing. They're dropping it off, blah, 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 blah.
yeah,
It worked out, but it's like the interview experience that I was just like, yeah, you were psychotic on that
yeah.
one. Like you were psycho.
Calm yourself. Yeah. Take a
I'm
deep breath, right?
like,
Well,
I tell people like it's the interview, so please don't go and thinking this is trial by combat. Like, do you watch Game of Thrones? Did you watch Game of Thrones at all?
not really. No. Too
Do
dramatic, too scary. I hate it. Too bloody. I don't like it.
do. I'm gonna
No.
change that. I'm gonna fix that. Trial
No,
by
but it's too
combat.
much. Too much. Too much
No,
violence. I
but
can't handle it.
it
It
was so
scares
good.
me.
It was so
Although
good.
I did watch like it's funny because I did watch like the finale of each season. So
What?
I just like don't watch it. But the finales were good. But it's just too violent. Like I can't watch it. It's
Yeah.
too
A lot
suspenseful,
of
too
people you love,
violence.
a lot of people you love die in really bad ways.
Which is so bizarre because I used to listen to so much true crime. So I'm like, I don't
Me
understand
too.
how I can make that rationalization.
I love it.
I'll like turn on some true crime, just like take a quick nap with it.
It's a trip. Yeah, sleep super comfortably while something
Exactly.
is playing in
But
the
then I'm like, oh,
background.
Game of Thrones, too violent.
Game of Thrones, yeah. But I tell people like it's not trial by combat. Like Game of Thrones fans are going to know what
Okay,
that is. It's not
gotcha.
trial by combat. It's okay to compliment other candidates. Actually, it's a positive thing for you to walk in there and have the energy about you that's like collaborative and
It,
friendly.
yeah, totally.
Even if inside you're thinking like, I'm gonna annihilate all of you.
Oh, no, actually, I disagree with that. Please, on the inside, try to not be so possessed as well.
You're
On the outside, on
possessed.
the inside, don't be so possessed because, if you don't end up at that facility and that program, it's
Mhm.
probably meant to be that way and it's
It
probably going to
is
be okay. And I say
100%.
this again just to remind you guys who are going through this, your career is going to be 40 years long,
More,
even more maybe. I don't know.
more,
Um
even more.
so whatever happens this
Yeah,
year, next year,
yeah.
guess what? You have like more decades left to
Yes,
go. So like
yes,
stop being so obsessed and competitive about like I have to have this. The
yeah.
other day I was talking to a student and I told her this story. I applied to 8 residency programs and I didn't match in any of them and the majority of those programs were VA programs. And I
Mm,
was like, "Oh no, blah blah blah. 10 years later, I work at the
the
VA.
VA.
Do you
Yeah,
know what I mean? And then maybe 10
yeah,
years later, I can work somewhere else. Like I
yeah.
have decades.
Yes.
So, like,
It's wild. Like I hope that that student really gained perspective by hearing you. It's why I tell you that I find your story so powerful. Because yeah, like when they talk to me, I tell them I help other people through this. Like I can help you through it. But they know my story. Like they know that I was the linear person forward. Like I am the one that got the phase 1 positive outcome and then went on. but I always tell them, like, I can relate to failure. I have failed. I failed so many times. I can relate to that component of it. But I think when they hear from people who know what that shock of that email is like, the vibe and the energy, it's different. It's completely different. And interviewing, I just think it's like, people who go to court and the lawyer that tells the best story gets the client to go home or go to jail. It's
100%. Yeah.
you have to have and like the people I'm working with, they're just like, oh my God, not this again. But you have to have in mind what you want to convey about yourself. You can't give so much power to the interviewer that the interviewer decides what piece of yourself you are going to share or what you're going to convey. You got to come in and say, I want them to know that my training has been extensive and there's been a lot of variety in it. I want them to know that I have had examples where I've jumped in on projects where I had no idea what I was doing, but guess what? I was determined to figure it out and I pushed through it and actually was successful in that. I want them to know that I am a leader. I'm not afraid to step up, even if I'm unsure of myself. I know how to look for that external support when I need it. But you can't go in and just hope for the best. This is not time to hope for the best. This is time to do everything you possibly can to ensure that the best is absolutely what you get, you
Yeah.
know?
So let's just do some quick spitfire do's and don'ts.
Oh
So,
boy.
do's,
Look
practice.
good. Look good. Look good for your
Oh,
interview. Like,
I agree with that because if you look good, then you feel more confident.
yes, you do.
Yeah,
Yes, you do.
very true. You don't
Yes,
want to
you
be,
do.
but you don't want to be wearing like a new shirt that you haven't worn before
Mhm.
because you don't want to be like worried, like, oh my God, is my shirt too see through? During an interview?
Yeah, you are
Nightmare.
such a girl. You're such
What?
a girl. You're like thinking about all the things. Like, wait, is this the right bra under the shirt? No,
Oh,
I gotta do that other color. It's because for girls, it's a whole process to show up polished, appropriate,
yeah.
and
Is my lipstick
everything,
on my teeth? No, you don't want to be thinking about stuff like that.
You don't. It
Very
needs to be
true.
a shirt, it needs to be a shirt, and it needs to be shoes,
And pants that are comfortable. Just yeah,
everything.
look good, but also feel comfortable,
Feel
right?
comfortable.
Yeah.
I tell people
Yeah.
that. What is your comfort zone? Is your comfort zone flats and sneakers? You can wear sneakers that are black, like those are considered professionals under a suit. You
Yeah.
wear comfortable shoes so that during your tour, you're focused on the tour and not focused on
Yeah.
onions are coming on.
But you're also confident because you know you look good.
You
So
know
you're
you
like,
look
yeah,
good.
you're
It's
strutting down the hallway. I'm like, nice to meet you.
not your imitation strutting down, like
That's
your imitation
like your
strut down the hallway,
shoulders.
like I know I look good. It's like you
Maybe
can't tell
that's
me
what
that.
inside, like in the inside, instead of worrying about the other candidates or whatever, on the inside, you're like,
Yes.
I am so hot. I am doing
Yes.
good. I'm where I'm meant to
Yes.
be. And go down there and
It's
kick
so
ass.
true. Like we're laughing and joking about it because it seems like something so trivial. But people who have tapped into this will be first to tell you, like, no,
Yeah.
this is facts. This is life. This is a life hack.
Oh yeah.
Look good and you're good. Watch how that translates into how you
Yeah.
feel walking around and speaking with people.
Okay. What's a
Um,
what's a don't?
a don't is for me, it's perfume on interview day.
Ooh, really? Yeah, that could really annoy me too. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't know what people's sensitivities are, particularly if you are interviewing in a hospital. It's
Oh
not
yeah.
just your sensitivity. If they take you on a patient care floor, there could be patient sensitivities.
Yeah.
It's about simplicity, a fresh, clean approach. You just don't want to be wondering, is it not? Is it no perfume, no aftershave, gents? Let's just keep it with soap and water today. It's one day. It's gonna be okay.
What's another do? I said practice before,
Oh,
but that's an
1050.
obvious thing. Like
But dude, you
you
would
better
think
practice.
that. Do you know how many people cold turkey interview? because they just have so much confidence in their ability to be likable.
Wow.
People cold turkey. I learned this at phase
Charismatic. Okay.
two because I asked them when they come to me at phase two, how many, what was your strategy to prepare for the interview? Oh, I looked at some questions online and I didn't really practice with anyone else and just went and I'm like, okay, so you cold turkey interview. Well, I looked at the questions. Okay.
No, 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 no.
Like
You have to practice
practice.
it yourself, like
No.
in the mirror,
Yes.
film yourself if you have to. There's
Yes.
so many options now.
Too
But
many.
I think the most important thing, and I can't emphasize this enough, is to make sure you run your answers with somebody else.
Yes.
Because I'll tell you one of the really bad responses that I had to a question of like tell me of a time where you or tell me of a time where a medical team did not agree with your recommendation and how did you
Yeah.
handle that? And I typically at the time I had two different options that I can go with. One was about pediatrics and the other one was with geriatric patients. And
Gotcha.
so when I was at the VA, um, and interviewing for the VA, I was like, okay, I'm going to go with the geriatric version. But that response was so abysmal compared to the pediatric version. Because with the pediatric
Mm.
version, I was able to prove to the team that this was the right response, this was the right recommendation, and they did go with my recommendation after
Yeah.
a lengthy discussion. With the
Yeah.
geriatric version, it was like me making this recommendation, the team didn't agree with me, and the ending to that response or the answer was kind of like, and then I learned that sometimes your recommendations aren't often taken no matter how hard you work for it.
Oh. Oh, Thu.
That was bad, right? That was really bad, right?
Oh, dear.
I know, but that's what
Oh, dear.
I mean, talk about embarrassing. Like it's like stuff that I had to really learn. And so
Yeah.
listen to what I did wrong, right?
Yeah.
One was so much better than the other, but I decided to
Completely.
go with the one that was not great because I
Yeah.
was like, oh, but this is a VA, hospital, and I think this might fit
Yeah.
better with their
Better with
population, but it
them.
just was not a good answer. And had I ran that answer with somebody else, they
Else.
would have been like, do not say that to anybody. Keep that to yourself, lock away, do not
I'm
even bring it
done.
out.
I cannot with
That
her.
should
She's
not
something
even
else.
be an option because much later on in my life, I was applying to a job now. And I
Yeah.
actually ran my answers with a friend of mine, and she's like, "Ooh, don't do that one because that one makes you look bad."
Go friend. Go friend. I want to give a shout out to all the friends that give you the
The
honest
real
feedback
feedback,
and
yeah.
keep it funky with you, even when you're not trying to hear it. We see you out there. You are appreciated.
Yeah. So truly, like I tell this story, I'm reliving these really embarrassing experiences, but I'm
Yeah, I
hoping that you
know.
guys can learn from it and
You
don't do the stupid
can.
thing that I did.
I
What's
think
another don't?
another don't that's in my mind, don't be late, but that's obvious.
Yeah,
But
that's very
but it still
obvious.
happens, right? Don't be late,
Yeah.
but people still come late and there's always a
I don't know
story.
how
We're
that's
polite.
possible.
We're polite. We'll listen to it. Like I had interviews
Oh,
in two interviews in Connecticut and it snowed all night into the morning. I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning to head to the hospital that day in an Uber because just coming late was
yeah.
not an option. Like I got to that hospital at like 5 a.m., sat in the lobby, continued practicing, continued reviewing my CV, kill time. The director of pharmacy walked past me, didn't know I was coming to the pharmacy for interview in like a couple hours. He later meets me and was like, did you sleep in our lobby? Talk
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
about humiliated.
Maybe be a little bit more like undercover if you're gonna do that. Maybe go to the cafeteria.
I was like, not quite.
You're
I
like,
just I've just been here for a few
that is
hours.
so
He's
funny.
like, I walked past you this morning at like 5. You were in the lobby this morning. I was like, yeah, but there's a whole story. We won't get into it. And everyone started laughing. Like, and then the RPD asked me,
Oh,
like, no, but like, when did you get here? I was like, oh, I woke up at 4 and I got here like it was like a 45-minute drive, but I just I was too paranoid about being late. He's like, well, we
yeah.
started late because everyone else interviewed. We came late. Right?
Hey,
But
at least again, memorable. Memorable story.
memorable. I'm
The girl
I'm
who
doing
slept in our
it.
lobby. We should have her on. She's already
I'm-
sleeping here.
she's dedicated. If as a resident, if it snowed, she's gonna be here,
Exactly, right?
right?
Yeah.
That's what I
Way
was
to
going for.
Oh my gosh. Okay. What's
But we
another
say
do?
another like a do. We talked about practicing, right?
Yeah.
A do that I think doesn't get done enough is storytelling. They're going to ask you all these different questions. Some of it is, what do you value? What do you think? Oh, I love this one question, but it freaks students out every time we're practicing. It's, what do you think is most important? Personability with your patients or your clinical aptitude?
Oh, oh.
Okay, right? It's like,
Can you say both?
look
Or
at
is
you.
that cheating?
I'm just gonna slide right in here in the middle and say I think they're both important.
Yeah.
But
I don't
what
want to
I
have to
tend to
compromise one over the other.
right, many of the students, believe it or not, think that they need to lean to the clinical aptitude side because they don't want to give up the energy that they are. Okay, Thu is waving her hand in the air. If you're just listening to us, she's like, no, no, no. Right?
You
They tend to
guys.
lean that way until I tell them it doesn't matter if you are Dr. Fauci. When you're talking to me, when you're coming and talking to me about my medications and you're bringing a recommendation to me, and it's the soft skills, it's the people skills, it's your
Ugh,
ability to,
very true.
you know what
I
I mean?
mean, I don't
Like,
want to I don't want to this is how I would probably formulate my answer is like
let's go.
anyone can be taught anything.
Thank
Clinical
you.
abilities can be taught easily, but if you don't
Yes.
have the soft skills, you don't have the people, like the people personality or whatever
Yeah.
that's called,
Yeah.
then you're gonna struggle. You're gonna struggle
Yes.
hard because guess what? Healthcare is about people. I know that
People.
oftentimes school does not focus on that enough,
How do we forget that?
but not only is that like healthcare is people, but also like in the business side of things,
Yeah.
it is the patient satisfaction as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
Is are patients going to recommend your facility to other people?
People.
And that's how CMS creates this ranking and then blah blah blah
And
blah blah.
star
But like
ratings and all that.
exactly,
Yeah.
you're an employee at the end of the day,
Hmm.
and you need to be helping the business bring in money. And that
And
is a people thing, which
I
is
don't
unfortunate,
know.
but you need to know that too,
You
you
need
know?
to know
You need to
that,
be
right?
aware of that. Yeah.
And I'm always fascinated that many of them, like when we're going through feedback and I tell them interpersonability as a healthcare, forget that you're a pharmacist as a healthcare, that's how you get the techs to cooperate with you. That's how you get other pharmacists to build relationships with them. That's how you get physicians. That's how you build trust with the providers. That's how you get to become the first person on the list when social worker is running out of options on securing drugs for their patient. It's how you get the community pharmacy down the road to tell you, I don't have it in stock, but the other pharmacy 2 miles down the road, let me call them and then I'll
Yeah.
text you. You relationship build.
Mhm.
You relationship build. But you could be the smartest person in the department, but once you've been labeled as unapproachable, condescending, rude, just no one cares about what you know. In fact, they'll rather go walk on hot coal than come to you with a question because they know you're about
Honestly,
to reduce them to ash. That's
honestly,
what this
working
question
with
is asking.
yeah. Yeah, honestly, working with people who can't deal with other people is so
Yeah.
tough. So
It's
you don't want to
tough.
be
That person.
saying like, yeah, you don't want to be that person for
Don't be
sure.
that person.
I would say a big do is to write down all the accomplishments that you've had, throughout your life, but especially in pharmacy so far, and
Yeah.
use that as storytelling
I
component.
call it I call it the humble brag list.
Ooh, humble
It's
brag.
it's such a it's such a weird title. How do I humbly brag? But it's a thing. Objectively, that's how you humbly brag. It's not bragging if I have proof of I did these things, right? So many students are so, I noticed it a lot more with my Black women candidates. They have a real difficult time talking about themselves. When I tell them, tell me about yourself. And we go through and they're talking and they're talking. I always have the CV pulled up and I'm like, so you're Rokai, so you're in PLS. So you have 3 publications. You've had a publication every year in pharmacy school. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's like their response. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh
Oh
yeah, I
yeah.
forgot about that. That was
I
me.
forgot about that. You were secretary of a chapter and you helped raise this much money for your chapter. You were vice president. Oh, well, I don't think that unless I'm president, it matters. They tend to downgrade a lot of the things that they've done. And this can go pretty much across the board. So I go through an exercise with the students and I tell them, why don't we disconnect from ourselves for a second? Let's create an avatar of ourselves and build your humble brag list. Like, give this avatar a name and then look at your CV and give her her props, give him or her their props. Through that list, I want you to start answering these interview questions as if you're talking about this other person.
That's so
That's how,
smart.
right?
That's
Like,
such a
that's
smart
how
thing.
I get them to completely just break up with themselves. And then, like, some of them just like,
Oh.
whew, I'm bad. I'm
I,
like, yeah, you
honestly,
are. You
I might even try that next time I do an interview because
it's
that's so
really I've
cool.
it's so
Yeah.
effective to because it forces you to see your avatar as a different person and you look at
Yeah.
your CV and you look at all you've done. We go through practical skills and we go through soft skills and we build this thing out. And then I'm like, okay, what do you value most in a team? What are the roles that most
I
people
love
pin you
that.
for during a group project? Tell me about a time you were in a group and you failed. You succeeded. You didn't meet deadlines. It's not always pretty. You got to be able to tell a story around the times like you also didn't get it right. But back to your point, like the monumental point of you have to practice, practice, practice. Because I don't know how quickly things come to your mind when you're nervous, but I'm sitting there like, I have so many examples. I can't pick one.
Yeah. I would also say a big do for me is to be able to show off your personality in
Yeah.
between questions and or if you're walking around and having the tour,
Yeah.
be charismatic. Start
Yeah.
talking to people in a friendly way. Maybe even make jokes and be
Yeah.
funny, like be yourself,
Be
show off your
yourself.
personality. I feel like we're so nervous to do that. And
Mhm.
I just feel like that's one way to, I don't know, be
I
memorable.
agree.
Um,
Who you are is
what's
so
another
important.
don't? Let's do one last don't because I'm starting to run out of them.
Let me see. I think, I don't know. We talked about the familiarity thing already.
Yeah, don't do
Like,
that,
they're like,
please.
those are
Very
like my
true.
top. Oh, wait, I have one.
Okay, last one.
A
Make it good.
major don't. Something that you
Oh.
will 99% of the time have on residency interview is a clinical challenge. During your clinical challenge, I don't care how this comes up. Programs have gotten so innovative with how they do clinical challenge now.
Really?
Sometimes they take the resident with them around and they give them a patient to work up. Like I
Talk
I
about
has
pressure. That's so
talk
much
about pressure, right? Like
pressure.
you thought it was an interview day, but you're actually on rotation with like a preceptor for like 2 hours. You're gonna go to rounds and they're gonna see how you participate on rounds. That's like to me the hardest version I've heard of so far. Other versions is they actually give you a case, give you half an hour to review it and give feedback. When you're going through this, I don't care what the structure of the clinical challenge is, please do not guess. Do not guess. We do not guess. As a
Ah,
pharmacist, your job is to get it right 100% of the time.
say it with me, guys. Say it with me. I don't know, but I will look it up.
You know, stay with me. Do not guess. Do not do not go on a roundabout and think that you're going to politically correctly answer that. It's a clinical challenge. We're not asking you about who was on the cover of People magazine. That's not what this is. Like this is the clinical challenge. We have a right answer in mind that we are looking for. And if you cannot deliver that, you cannot deliver that unless you look it up, which is 1000% allowed as a pharmacist. But what is not
Oh, yeah.
allowed is guessing. I can't
Okay.
believe this fled my mind.
Oh, good. That's a really good one. And actually this is a really good example of clinical jobs in general. It's not even residency because I've
Hmm.
been in two clinical job interviews now, clinical position interviews now, where it's a lot of clinical questions and clinical cases that I have to review. And
Yeah.
let me tell you, even after 6, 7 years of practicing, there's still areas where I don't know on the top of my head. And no
Yes.
matter how much I practice or studied before the interview, I will still don't remember or I still don't have that experience. And so then during the
Exactly.
interview, I say very honestly, I've never had to do that before, but I'm sure I can look up the guidelines available
Yes.
to make the proper decisions and have a
Yes.
conversation with my team.
Yes.
My first clinical interview was for that first clinical position was probably one of the most intimidating job interviews
Wow.
I've ever had. I was sitting in this room with 9 other clinical pharmacists
Oh,
and the director, the pharmacy director, and like the supervisor, all those people were in the room and they were just asking me one after one after one and I was just like intimidated, but I was able to, you know, I was prepared. I was ready to
yeah.
do this thing. Plus I had 2 years of PGY 1 and PGY 2, so I
Too.
was really ready to show off what I know and what I can do. Um but then I had a freaking like, it was a 3-page clinical test, basically.
Yeah.
3 or 4 different cases, really tough cases. One of them, I had to manage somebody's pain. One of them, I had
Mm.
to work on a TPN.
Oh,
And then it was just
wow.
like, a vancomycin dosing and a warfarin dosing or something like that. It was like
Gotcha.
stuff that you would typically do on that
Yeah,
job anyways,
service.
on that service. And, oh
Wow.
man, it was scary because the TPN I hadn't done TPN in a year. So I remember what I could.
I've done TPN. Never.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I remember what I could, but honestly, I told them like, "This is what I created so far. I haven't done TPN in a while, but I know what we're looking for, and I can definitely use your protocol to guide me to the right direction." And even with the pain management, I went on a palliative care rotation, one palliative care rotation.
Yeah.
So I don't remember all the details of pain management, but I
Yeah.
do remember the most important ones. And then again, I said to them, I haven't done pain management in a while, but I know that there's a protocol that we could use. Plus, these are the resources that I would look at if I were to
Yeah.
make recommendations.
That's it. That's it
I
right there.
just knowing where you can go to
Go where
get the
you can
information
go.
because
Yes.
there's no way that you have all of it in your head, especially when you don't have all the resources around you. So,
They believe that the clinical challenge, they must nail it. They must nail it.
yeah.
I will never tell someone to not prepare for the clinical challenge component of their interview. It is the component of your interview, right? But more important than anything, I think, is your ability to actually present that case, your ability to verbally convey that you understood the case, you understood what your challenge was. And now the problem you're having is actually building that plan for the patient without the proper resource and support that you need. There are some unforgivables, of course. Like if I ask you what is the mechanism of action of a DOAC, a mechanism of like to me, those things that are unforgivable during an interview is basic pharmacology. When I'm
Oh my
working with it,
god.
I tell them if I ask you what's the mechanism of action of Entresto or what is the, you better not tell me I have to look that up. No, I'm unforgiving when it comes to basic
Oh
pharmacology
god.
because I feel like all your rotations this year, whether it was ED or crit care or something, somebody had drilled home that pharmacology and understanding how drug works and what the major things you look out for, it's the first thing you want to have down pack about the drugs for some of these big, big, big disease states. But don't guess. If you don't know the
That's a
pharmacology,
that's the most important one, and
it's
just
very
don't guess
important.
in
Mm-mm,
general, and this is why it's
mm-mm.
so important because we wanna make sure that when you're actually working in that facility and a
Yeah.
patient is asking you a question or a nurse or provider or something, that you're not just giving them a random answer
Yes,
off the top of
sir.
your head without being for sure that that
Yeah.
is the right thing, because if you tell them something that's incorrect, that you just guess on
It
top of your
touches the
head,
patient.
you may hurt somebody. That is
Yes.
such a crucial thing, like, that's the thing that will freak me out the most if I notice a resident or a student doing that. I would correct them immediately. I would say,
Immediately.
"Please just tell me you don't know and go look
Yeah.
it up," rather
Yeah.
than just telling me an answer that you think might be might be right because that's
Might
not
be
how
right.
it's
No.
just not safe.
That
Um,
that doesn't wait for feedback Friday.
uh,
We fixed that on the spot.
on the moment.
In the
Exactly.
moment, yeah.
Of course,
It's so
try to
scary.
do it in the nicest way possible. But yeah, that's a really good one to end the section here, the segment here. But
Yeah.
I will tell you one time a an RPD asked me a question about what if you were an animal, what animal would you be?
They're the fun ones.
The
Those are
fun
the
ones.
fun ones. If you could be a drug, what drug would you be?
Oh, that's a fun one too.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
my answer, okay, so so the person who asked me this question was an Asian man, and in my
Okay.
head I was like a dragon. But then I was like, oh my God, that might be like a little bit too race like related.
You were really thinking hard.
I was really like, oh wait a minute, I don't know if I should say that. So I said a dog because it can be trained and to do many things.
Oh, but
So I went with the
that's such
more
a
basic
good
answer. I
answer.
should have gone with dragon. Like I'm a dragon, baby.
Oh my God. Listen, if you're only listening to this episode, you have to go on YouTube and watch it because you have to see Thu impersonate a dragon. It's
Oh
gonna
my God.
be the
But
highlight
my
of your
dragon
day.
is almost like my Mulan dragon, like Mushu.
Mushu. She's more like Mushu than
I'm for
she is like
Mushu.
a real dragon.
Hey, Mushu was an
Yeah,
awesome character.
Mushu is a legendary character.
Iconic. Yes.
Iconic. It really is. I'm done. Oh my God.
Oh,
I love
anyways,
those in like I got hit with you're stranded on an island. What three things do you have to bring with you?
people ask that a lot.
Um,
My
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 anti-rejection
I
meds.
was gonna
I
say
don't get I don't get to bring water. I don't get to it's like how am I gonna take the meds? Well, we're gonna figure out we'll look for a stream, but I know that no matter what happens, I have to have my Tacro, my MMF, and my prednisone. Once I
done
have
three
those three
things.
things,
Done. But
I'm gonna be
okay,
okay.
that's a good point because should students disclose an opioid of some form? Like, I'm gonna bring some oxycodone for pain. Should they?
Yeah,
Is that too
right?
much? Is
Like,
that
oh,
too
what kind of
suspicious?
pain? It's
Yeah,
like,
well, I mean, if you're stranded on a deserted island, you would imagine maybe you got into a major accident, like the plane
yes,
had crashed,
that's right. Injuries, right?
and you may need oxycodone. I don't know.
Yeah. You may need pain man.
Is
I
this
tend
too
to advise,
explicit? I feel bad now.
no,
Do
don't.
we bleep this out? No, I'm
I
just kidding.
usually recommend the Tylenol route. That
Go with a
Tylenol,
more PG. Yeah, go with PG.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the stranded island question, the reason why it's so popular, it's because people who answer it well do it by storytelling. Like they share things
Mm.
about themselves, right? Like a really cool story. The girl, she was like, well, I'm pretty much allergic to everything, so my EpiPen has to come with me. I was like, oh, so she has a lot of
That's
allergies.
smart.
Like
That's
I'm
smart.
learning something about her. And she's like, and the other thing is, tropical island, I'm gonna have some form of an infection. I just know it because
Yeah.
I'm nosy. I touch things, I touch my face, and I don't know how to tell food from poison. So doxycycline is definitely
Ooh,
coming with me.
doxycycline. Interesting. Interesting source of antibiotic.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I
I would
was
have
like,
gone with augmentin, if
she,
anything.
yeah, she's thinking. Like
Yeah,
she's
yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
thinking about like all the different things that she could encounter.
Yeah, be creative with it. For
Be very
sure.
creative. It could be very, very helpful. But that one is so popular. Like, and he won't go out of style. Like I got asked that so many times, and now even people I work with and recently they're like, I got asked the stranded island question. I'm like, it's
But
because they
but
learn about
but
you.
seriously though, maybe residency programs and interviews in general, can we come up with better questions, please?
Yeah. Like
Let's retire the stranded island one because that's a little bit outdated now. Let's do a fun one. If
it's
you were on a
so
virtual island, if you were doing virtual reality,
virtual
like stick with the
reality.
times, okay? People are
Yeah, let's get
yeah,
with the times.
yeah.
Let's create a whole
Yeah.
like virtual environment and
Oh
put the
yeah.
resident in it. Like, and let's get very high tech with it here. Like, do some Nicki Minaj gag city situation where the resident finds
Oh,
themselves in different situations and they navigate those situations. Hey, I may have an idea here.
That's
People like,
amazing. Yeah, guys, listen to us. We know what's
listen
going
to,
on.
we know what we're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I feel like that's gone over time. That
No
topic we can
way.
go over and over and over again. But let's take a break and then let's go back and talk about some quick terrible pharmacy advice and then
Yeah.
end the conversation. Okay.
All right, cool.
All right, we are back. And just to
Hey.
save time and not make this episode 3 hours long,
Because we could make it 3 hours.
what is one bad advice that you got in your pharmacy career that you feel like everybody needs to know about this?
Man. And I think the reason why this was so bad, it's because it was still in the formative years of my career. I was early in my career as a resident, and I was advised that if you're going to get anywhere in pharmacy in this profession, that was how it came out. If you're going to get anywhere in this profession, you better learn how to tame that personality of yours. That was the advice I was given when I was sitting there, really actually hoping that I would be given like actionable items, resources, things that I can actually pursue to grow and develop myself.
Wow.
That's what I was given, that my
What was the
personality.
what was the background behind all of that? Did you go to this mentor for a specific situation or just in
It
general?
was an
Like,
exit evaluation.
oh, an exit evaluation.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I think
Wow.
like what was not just made it bad, but it was also hurtful. It was that when the way it was put was like that personality of yours, as if my personality has been such a topic of conversation that it has picked up an identity of its own. It wasn't said to me like you may want to tame your personality, but it's that personality of yours as like a separate entity, completely different from me. Um, and I knew that this advice wasn't advice. This was something I will never refer to or pull on. Every opportunity I have ever gotten, every door that's ever opened for me has opened for me because of exactly who I am. I had no interest in changing that. I had no interest in
Yeah.
changing that. So I mean, I just walked away from that encounter just like, okay, well, this just solidifies that I've been here this entire time and no one or you who gave me this advice, you've never really taken the time to even get to know who I am.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, hearing it hurt, but it wasn't pain I carried. I just knew that, nah, I'm not gonna, that's not anything I can do anything with.
Yeah, that's so painful because
Yeah,
obviously you've developed a relationship with this person to for them to say something like that.
like
But
that.
I've been told that almost my whole life, I feel like.
Really?
Yeah, it's like don't be so opinionated. I don't be so loud. Or it's
Yeah,
it's maybe like not very direct like that, but it's like, "Ugh, you're so opinionated," or like, "Ugh,
yeah,
you're so loud."
yeah. It's,
And it's, unlike you, I took it very seriously, and this is why it's such a
mm,
bad advice.
yeah,
Because ultimately what you're doing is dulling yourself for somebody else's comfort,
correct,
and then you
correct.
lose your voice and you lose who you are, and that's
Mm,
probably the most detrimental thing that you can do for yourself.
yeah,
And I've
and
had to learn that
no,
in a really bad way. Like you reach almost not a rock bottom necessarily, but you reach a point where you're like, who am I? And what do
it's
I
no, it's
want?
very true. It can be very demoralizing. I think the benefit that came out of it for me was this was the end. Like I was done. I was on my way out. I was already focusing on my next thing. This was just one more thing I was obligated to sit through and do. So here I am, and that's what you have for me. Thank you. I'm moving on anyway. Um, but it came when like my identity is already solidified. I have proof that my personality and who I am, and people who have actually taken the time and energy to get to know me, that's not the sentiment that they've given me. Like a bunch of people can have one opinion of me, and then one person's opinion all of a sudden comes and turns that on its head. And I'm just so grateful that in that moment, I leaned into what I knew to be true about myself instead of the external and what I was receiving in that moment. And I've paid for that. Like I've paid for my big personality. I've paid for my voice. I've paid for my being opinionated, and I've paid for just not allowing people to treat me a certain way. I've paid for that, but that is a price I am ready to pay consistently 10,000 over, because I'm
Yeah.
just, I don't hurt people. I'm not
Right.
unkind. I'm not malicious. I'm not vindictive. I'm not fake.
You're not
People
toxic in many
toxic.
ways. Yeah.
People that I don't like, they know I don't like them. It's like, I mean, there's not a whole lot of middle ground with that. They are fully aware
Yeah.
that they're not my people, and I know that I'm not their people, right?
It's
So
a great example to set that you are someone who is not scared of people not liking you and that you yourself are like, yeah, I don't like everybody, which is
mhm,
something that I really had to, deal with. It's like, oh no, I don't like that person. Why? Ah. And it's like I question myself of like, why don't I like that? It's a whole
yeah.
thing. So, the bad advice that I got was when I was looking to leave my old job and I was looking elsewhere and potentially there was several options that I could take and there's a lot of opportunities that I found. So I called up one of my coworkers and I said, "Hey, can I ask you your opinion because you've been in pharmacy longer? I'm thinking about applying to this job here, applying to this job there. What are your thoughts on that?" And this person spent like 15 minutes just talking me out of leaving the job in general. And she was like, I know of a person who left our facility and then really regretted it. And she thought that this other place was better, but it turns out it wasn't. And she's now looking into going back to us. So do you really want to leave? And then she talked about you would have to create new relationships. Like you've already established your practice here. Like, why would you want to leave now? And
I'm sorry. Like,
what if they
what?
don't pay you as much? What if and she went on and on, literally like 10, 15 minutes of just like all of the things why I should not leave,
Should
even though
not
I called her up to say,
say
"Hey, I'm
I
thinking
am.
about hey, I'm thinking about going to branch out of my comfort zone and
Oh
moving into a
my
different
gosh.
place. What do you think?" And she really took her time talking me out of that. And I'm glad I did not listen to her because
I am
guess what?
so glad you did not listen to her.
I
What?
like my new job here. I like that I get to build new relationships. I
Yeah.
love that I get to show more people what pharmacists can do. I
Yeah.
like that my salary actually went up instead of lower like she thought, and I
So
have no regret and I have no reason to go back. And by the way, now that I'm in this new position, I look back and I'm like, "Oh, that place was not that great
oh,
sometimes."
I was
And
literally about to say, I'm like, so she painted a picture for you, and the stark opposite of all of that have come to pass.
100%. But talk about really bad advice.
It's awful. And
Talk
like,
about projecting your own insecurity and fears on somebody else.
on
Yeah.
someone else. And I think like if you are a preceptor, if you are a friend, if you are a teacher or anyone where someone has identified you as a person that they can come to for advice, I want you to really take that responsible, like take that seriously. Seriously enough to know that what you share with people and think it's advice, it could be harmful. So as the person given the advice, don't just nilly-willy this thing and just say things because this meeting was set and I have to tell you something that you need to improve on. Okay? If you're a person who is seeking advice, hear me when I tell you that all the advice that you receive, you are under zero obligation to take them all. Zero. You need to take people's feedback and place it in the shadow of who you are and what you want and what you are hoping to accomplish. Because the real magic starts to happen when what the external and what you know about yourself, when the alignment starts to happen, that's when the magic starts to happen. But don't be surprised that what you're receiving externally, you cannot identify with it. And it just means that you have to have the courage to go at it anyway.
Yeah, I know. It's so much scarier to do that, to go
Yeah.
against what this person told you, but
Yeah.
you gotta trust in yourself too. And you come to advice with the idea that you take the parts that you want to take and then leave the rest.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be putting so much weight on somebody else's words because they have their own baggage and their own bias and their
Yeah.
own problems. Um, Last thing though, we give a lot of advice here on our
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
And same goes with us, you guys.
Yes.
Don't take everything we say face value, reflect on it.
Yeah.
What actually works for you and what
Yeah.
doesn't? I see so many people on social media, for example, like a very specific one, like, oh, when I when I picked out my residency programs that I wanting to apply to, I knew that this is what I wanted because I wanted to be an oncologist pharmacy or whatever. Like I'm making
Yeah.
something up. And so I look for a program that is in oncology, that is blah, 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 and has all these different things. And if you look at where they are now in their career, they're actually like, I don't know, an ambulatory care pharmacist now because their career has changed.
Changed.
But that's the thing that they left out.
Yeah.
It's like, I thought I wanted to be an oncology pharmacist. And so I looked for all these things in their residency. But by the way, now I'm in
I'm an
ambulatory
M
care.
care.
Life
No
changes,
M
life
care.
happens. And I think that like it's great to give very specific advice on certain things, but don't put so much pressure
Pressure.
on all the specifics because
Yeah.
I'm telling you, like things change and you
Things
can't
change so
predict
quick.
anything.
I know.
So, anyways, yeah, I just want to.
I am pro personalized plan. I am pro
Ooh,
personalized
that's a
plan.
very,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a much better option.
One of the taglines of Resi Prep is personalized. This is I
Yeah,
want to understand what your experiences have been, what you want to do, what you envision for yourself. And our plan emerges in the shadow of that, not based on what the profession is doing and saying has to happen, but it's what you envision for yourself. It's a really, really powerful professional strategy to employ and just say that I'm on my own path and my own journey in this big thing. I may take a piece of what Thu's saying, a piece of what Sally's saying, or like
yeah,
what Sally just said is absolutely bonkers. I could never. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
I could never in a million years, I could never. You are allowed to do that. You're allowed to do that because what Sally's journey has been is not going to be what your journey is and what Thu's journey is not.
yeah,
But the bits
exactly.
and pieces that fit will only fit if you're also reflecting on like what your
Yeah,
situation and what you care about and place value on. That's all.
yeah. And remember from our previous episode, our New Year challenge for you is to
Yes.
trust yourself.
Trust
So
yourself.
please keep working on that and do your best and let us know down in the comments below how you've been
Yeah.
doing that so far and where your
Yeah.
journey's been.
That
Um,
is nice.
But that's it for our
That
episode
is
today. Oh my
it.
goodness. I feel like we always have so much to say because we just have
It's
so many stories to tell,
because
but
we're so full of wisdom,
we
girl.
are
Come
full of
on.
wisdom. And guess what? Our lives have been so interesting that there's just the information just comes out, it flows out of our mouths.
I'm done. I can't with you. Like, even when I'm trying to be serious, I can't.
No serious here.
That's, that's not what we do here.
That's not what we do here. No, 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 no.
I cannot.
By the way, I'm really glad that you convinced me to do that trend.
Of
We are
course.
pharmacist trends. I think
Yeah.
you texted me that like weeks ago, and
Ago,
then
yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if I want to do a trend. I don't know. And I finally had this idea one day randomly at work, and I was like, okay, we
We're
are
doing
gonna do
it.
this. Yeah,
If you
yeah.
haven't
So
seen it, go look for
check
it.
it out.
It's pretty cool.
I'll put it on the YouTube video too so that you guys can
Yeah.
remember what we talked about. But anyways, thank you so much for tuning in to us today. If this episode speaks to you and you think that others may benefit from hearing our stories, send this episode to them. And this way it'll help them, but it also will help us reach more people.
Absolutely. This episode is going to be available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast. You can connect with us through all of our individual socials that will be linked in the episode descriptions below with our handles and how you can find and support us and support the podcast. As always, we are so appreciative. Do not forget to rate and review the show. It means so much to us. Until next time, don't you forget it. We got
this.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
We are pharmacists, so of course nobody knows what we do. And as a matter of fact, some may compare us to UPS drivers.
People love their pharmacists, I would say, almost as much as UPS drivers or whatever.
The comparison. What? What? I'm a pharmacist. Of course, we all got A's and or honor students. C's get PharmDs? Yes. Uh-huh. I'm a pharmacist. Of course, my job is boring and super uneventful. I got stuck on a psych ward. I was just doing my job. It's time for me to leave, and the security guard thought I was a patient trying to elope.
We are pharmacists, and the only reason why we got into pharmacy was because our immigrant parents told us to.
Why pharmacy for me? A pharmacist literally saved my life. I wanted to pay for it.
We're pharmacists, so of course we're going to start a podcast talking about nothing but medications, and it's f***ing boring.
Enough of that clinical talk, though, because
I know, because that's not what we do here.
no.